Hello, and welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah, and today I want to talk all about the power of strategic undertraining. Now, this is something I was thinking about actually on my run this morning, and I thought this could be a flip the script kind of episode because I think a lot of times we think undertraining to be something that could be negative or something that is going to hinder us and hinder our performance. But as I'm in the midst of getting back into running consistently and more importantly, feeling good and feeling healthy, both body and mind with running, I think that this can be a really interesting place to be for athletes as they head into the fall race season or even into 2026 and their race seasons going into next year, and how, if we are strategic with our training, we can find a lot of growth and a lot of good that can come from it. So I'm excited about today's episode. So I'm going to share with you what exactly overtraining is, why runners can overtrain, prevention of overtraining and burnout, which is pretty big, how you can have a fresh body and mind on race day, the power of your aerobic fitness, the smart and strategic way that it creates your training and your mind, and also why it promotes a healthy relationship with running. So, for those of you who don't know, I am going through one of my first injuries in quite some time. I would say about 10 years. And, I think I've had a lot of time to look back on the last year or few years of running for me and what that's looked like as I've chased really big goals and I've put myself out there and I've trained hard. I've been very, very, very consistent, almost probably consistent to a fault. And now I'm in a place of injury and coming back from that injury. So I have plantar fasciitis, which is maybe one of the most difficult injuries to come back from. And I say difficult because it isn't an injury that's straightforward. It's not an injury that you can necessarily train through. It's not necessarily an injury that you cross train through. And it's not necessarily an injury where you say, if I do X, then I get Y as the outcome. So it is one of those injuries that's a very ebb and flow injury. And I'm really learning that I have to give myself grace. I get to show up every day and see what the morning brings with my run and what I'm able to do, and not let my ego or not let what I want to do stand in the way of what I need to do in order to stay healthy, to still get movement, but to really stay healthy and make sure that I can continue to kind of build on each day and not necessarily take too many steps backwards. I think for anyone who's been through this injury, you understand that there are going to be steps that you kind of take backwards. I have an athlete kind of going through it right now. We basically got injured on the same day, where it just kind of blew up on us on the exact same day with the exact same workout, just a few hours apart from each other. And it's interesting talking to her every week about it. And, you might have 3 really great days and you've built, some good volume and everything feels good. And then something just happens to kind of take you down on that 4th day. So it's really, really, it's an interesting place to be. And, I know I've talked about this before on the podcast, but my body was 100% telling me to slow down many, many, many months before this happened. And after finishing the Indianapolis Marathon, I ran a 3:08. And after finishing that race and talking to my coach, I really wanted to run under 3:05. I thought I was in shape to run under 3:05. And I said to her, kind of even before this race, before Indianapolis, I said, if I don't run under a 3:05, I'm going to take this race as a failure, which is like, I don't know. Have you been there before in training and on race day where you're like, I need X outcome. And if I don't get that, this is going to be just a complete flop. Now, caveat, context, my PR was 3:15. So like anything under a 3:15 should have warranted like a hell yeah. And I remember crossing the finish line and seeing my time, and I wasn't necessarily paying attention to what was happening in the last 5K of the race because I was very, very tired. I was slowing down, and I just knew I was between 3:05 and 3:10 because the 3:10 pacer hadn't passed me. And I crossed the finish line and I did this like Tiger Woods, like, yeah, like this arm pump. I was just so excited and I was so happy with that time. And I was so content with that time. And that is something that I keep thinking about, is how content I was with that time. For someone who's going after a sub-3 marathon, I was very, very content with a 3:08. So much so that I waited until the very last few hours to register for the Chicago Marathon for 2025, which is coming up in 8.5 weeks as I record this episode. And I think what's also interesting is yesterday I logged into my account to take a look at my corral assignment. I think I had the ability to kind of shift things around with my corral. I could move myself up if I wanted to, and I didn't. And I also noticed that I bought race insurance, which is the very first time I've ever bought race insurance for a race. And I thought that was really interesting. Subconsciously, I think I knew I needed a break. I needed a break from running. I needed a break from the schedule. I needed a break from how much time I was putting into it and how much time I was dedicating to it, and how much time it was kind of taking away from other things that I really wanted to have in my life and experience and be part of. And, I kind of just wasn't listening to that. It was a whisper. And over the course of the next several months, from December, January, I ran the Houston 5K. It was okay. I was kind of flat that day. Went into February training, didn't feel good. March training, still didn't feel good. Maybe had a few good workouts here and there. And, went into my first of 3 10Ks in April, I believe was my first 10K. And it was terrible. It was a terrible 10K. I think I averaged close to marathon pace. So very not good. And I also just didn't feel good. So it's like that whole kind of dynamic. And I wasn't excited to go to workouts. I wasn't excited to get up early for long runs. I wasn't excited to meet people for long runs and get up early and have those commitments. I just wanted to be, and I felt like I was communicating that to people who are around me at the time. And I think, when you put a big goal out there like sub-3, the people in your life also want you to see and have that goal, right? And so a lot of the conversation was like, you gotta keep going, you gotta keep going. And it was really in May where my body really started to yell a little bit at me or bark a little bit at me. And then the whole entire month of June, I was sick. I had a cough, a cold. I had the stomach bug for a full week, which someone else had that same stomach bug and he was out for one day. I was out for an entire week. So I think that's to me a very big realization of how run down I was. And then going into July 1st, that was the last day that I ran a workout. I was running 200s and my foot just basically exploded on the track. And, I was limping around that day and, I knew it wasn't good. And I think I was having such a tough time balancing all of it, how I was feeling, with running, especially as someone who is a coach who promotes running and how much I love it, and the power of consistency and the power of training. And then also kind of being forced out of it with my body telling me I can't do it, not necessarily me standing up for what my gut's telling me and saying, hey, I'm going to take this cycle off. I'm going to take this summer off. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to do what I want to do. So the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks since July 1st have been really eye-opening. I've been immobile for some parts of that time and really trying to get the inflammation down in my foot. I've had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to reflect, not a lot of running going on. And with that, not a lot of cross training either. I really felt like I wanted to lean into what was going on versus try to distract and continue to cross train, because cross training was not a happy, joyful place for me. And I've been in that place for maybe far too long with running that I really just wanted to be and to sit in it, and, to have the ability to take my dog for a hike or for a walk without it, not feeling good or not having the time for it because I was doing all this cross training. So, cut to today. This is August 13th when I'm recording this. And today I got to run 2 by 5 minutes at marathon tempo in carbon plated shoes, which was actually one of the bigger needle movers for me, is being able to get out of a trainer and back into a carbon plated shoe. And, to tell you the truth, it was interesting. I'm 8.5 weeks out from Chicago, and I still don't know what I'm doing with the race. I still don't know if I'm racing it. And it really doesn't have anything to do with my training at this point. It really has a lot to do with where I'm at mentally and how much I know I can give versus how much I know I need to be super flexible right now, given how I feel each day and how I wake up and how much sleep I'm getting and all the things. So it was fun, though, in some sense, of having something other than easy and feeling that pace again, and feeling feeling the consistency of the 2 5-minute intervals, which were only a second apart. And I had these really sweet St. Bernard dogs running next to me for part of the tempo, which was so sweet. And they just brought so much joy. They just had like the biggest smile on their face. Um, and it was great. It was great. And that was today. And yesterday I talked to my coach about, if I ended up running Chicago, I'd be able to lean on to so much in my training that I've built over the last 6 years, that I think that's why I'm so indifferent about it, is that I know I have a lot of fitness that I can kind of lean into, and that I can still run potentially a stronger race than 3:08 if that's something I want to do. And I haven't really made that decision yet. Today was a great day. The workout was a great experience. My foot is pretty good. It's not 100%, but it's, given the volume increase and the intensity increase, I'm very happy with how it feels. It's like 1 out of 10 discomfort. So that feels good. So on my cool down, on my way home today, I thought, I have a whole series planned for this podcast. It's going to be a little bit different. That's going to come out probably in a few weeks. And I was going to start that series today. And then I thought, on my cool down on the way home, I want to talk about undertraining and maybe the benefits of undertraining and how you can still show up on race day undertrained and have the race of your life, or the race that you want to have. Because I'm in that situation now. It's something I could possibly have if that's something I want. So here we go. What is undertraining? Undertraining. Okay, so that was my injury slash life update. Now I want to get into this week's episode. I want to talk about what exactly is undertraining. I want to talk about how to prevent overtraining and burnout, so the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I am going to talk about why we might undertrain in life and how it all kind of works together. And then the benefits of undertraining, which can be fresh body and mind, the power of aerobic fitness, being smart and strategic, and building and promoting a healthy relationship with running. So let's get into the first point, which is why runners might undertrain. Why runners might undertrain. So this is life. Typically, it's life coming in and saying, oh, you're not going to get in exactly what you want, or maybe even close to what you want in this training cycle. And that sometimes is okay. So it could be time constraints. So life gets in the way with work, with family, other commitments that are going on. And I think in this season of my life, I've really, I've been a big believer in that training gets to fit into life. And yet I wasn't fully like leading that way. I was definitely like putting training above a lot of other things, or just being really focused on what I needed to do, very intentional with what I needed to do when it came to training. And I think it's okay to say, like, hey, I'm not getting this run in because I have these other commitments, or I'm not going to do the full whatever, the full run, the full mileage, because I have X. So life can kind of become the bigger priority. So you might not get in all the training that you want to get in. I think if you're working with a coach, the most important thing that you can do is communicate that, because as someone who does work with athletes, if I'm seeing inconsistency in training, I want to know why. And having that honest conversation of, hey, my spouse really needs me to help with XYZ, or hey, work is really crazy for these 2 weeks. Hey, this is going on. It all helps. Over communicating in life and in running is far better than under communicating. You could undertrain from a lack of a training plan. This is very common with someone who might not have a plan, for someone who might just be following something online and there's not an accountability factor to that plan. That can be a really huge and big place for someone to come in to a race undertrained because they just haven't simply been following the plan. And that's also normal. You could be injured, like I am, or you could have an illness. And that's also something I was dealing with in June. I think out of what would be 8 to 10 workouts plus 4 to 5 long runs out of the month of June, I think I ran 2 workouts, and that was it. And I was sick and still running, but I was sick. So not being able to get in exactly what you're looking to get in terms of the plan, can definitely come in the fact of injury or illness. Now, overconfidence is another big one, because you might simply not have enough time. Like, you might be thinking to yourself as you're listening to this episode, which I'm recording 8.5 weeks out from Chicago. You're listening to it a little bit closer to 7 weeks. What if you're running a fall marathon? What if you're running Chicago? What if you're running Marine Corps? What if you're running Indianapolis? My gosh, you might be confident that you have all the time in the world to train, but time is slowly dwindling. You are running out of runway, and that overconfidence of winging it and relying on past fitness may or may not be the best approach. And then, of course, that fear of overtraining. So I see this in athletes sometimes too, where you might be so afraid that you're going to overdo it that you underdo it. So you might be so worried of pushing too hard, because maybe that's happened in the past, that you don't actually push or train enough. But there are a lot of studies that show that a runner can do significantly more in a race if they are 5% undertrained versus 10% overtrained. And that's the convo I've had with my coach about the last 6 years of training and everything I've done in running over the last 6 years. And I haven't been injured, and I haven't taken a break, and I haven't taken a pause, and I've just continued to train cycle over cycle over cycle. That something like what I've been going through over the last 6, 8, 9 months is super, super, super common. And it's eventually going to get you. It's eventually going to get you. So being able to rely on those last 6 years of fitness is what I'm doing, as I'm in this unknown stage of training of, I don't even know if I'm running Chicago or another fall race for that matter. So those are all reasons why runners might undertrain. But let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, which is overtraining. So I think this is the topic that a lot of coaches and a lot of influencers actually talk about um, in the space of running, is like that overtraining and that burnout syndrome. It takes a lot to overtrain, and it takes a lot to burn an athlete out. It really does take a lot, and it's typically not communicating. Like in my case, over the last 9 months, I didn't do a great job communicating how I was feeling. I was like kind of beating around the bush to a few people about like not wanting to go for runs or feeling flat or, just feeling like I had to adjust all the workouts and just not feeling good. So that is first and foremost really needing to communicate. But I think one of the most, maybe the most significant benefit of being slightly undertrained is obviously that avoidance of overtraining syndrome. But the overtraining is such a big piece of feeling fatigued all the time. And it's a different fatigue than training fatigue. It's being tired all the time. And looking back on the last 9 months, that's all I remember saying is how tired I was all the time. And not being that like bubbly, happy, social person that I am. I was just so tired and everything just seemed like a chore. And that's it, and even like fun things seemed like a chore, which is not a good place to be. And I'm not saying I was overtrained. Was I burnt out? Maybe. Um, you have a higher risk of injury for overtraining and burnout. So, as a resilient runner over the last 2 decades of running, I haven't had that many injuries. Here I am sitting with an injury. Hormonal imbalances also are part of overtraining, and then a complete loss of motivation. And it's that motivation of not wanting to lace up, not wanting to go for a run, not wanting to go out for those workouts, those long runs, meeting your team for workouts, making the time for it. That's all overtraining. It takes a lot to overtrain. It really does. And many, many, many times, it's actually an athlete who's just under recovering than an athlete who is pushing too hard, or not taking enough downtime or not taking enough time between cycles. So that's typically when things start to fall apart, is more of that under recovery than anything else. So I think the key distinction to make between being undertrained or overtrained is really just finding that right balance for you. And sometimes that balance is going to be doing a little bit less, doing less. Less is more. For overachieving runners, that's a really hard concept to, I think, grasp. I know it's been really tough for me to grasp, doing less, feeling like, is this going to be enough? Am I going to be able to do this if it's something that I want to do? What if I really want to do this 2 weeks out, but then I look back and think, oh my gosh, I really haven't actually done enough. So I can't do this. It's all about finding the right balance. And one of the biggest pieces to lean into is knowing that every training cycle is going to be different. Every single training cycle is going to be different. You're not going to have the same balance or the same training for each cycle because life is different. And I wish I knew that 6 months ago. I really wish I pumped the brakes in hindsight, because my life was different and I couldn't do it all. And I was having a very difficult time balancing it all. And I think for overachieving people, when that happens, we just want to push harder and we want to make it all work. And then it leads to everything kind of crumbling around us because nothing's going to work. So, really finding that right balance and learning how to ride the waves of training and life, and when it's okay to kind of pull the levers of leaning in versus leaning out, I think is a really mature way to approach training. Let's talk about undertraining and having what it can do for an athlete, like the benefits of it. So, the benefits of undertraining is showing up with a fresh body and a fresh mind on race day, which is arguably one of the best things to have on race day. So if you are training too much, it can leave you feeling physically and mentally exhausted by the time the race is actually here. So I had this experience in Boston of 23. So it was my second Boston Marathon. And about 6 weeks out, I had one of the best, maybe 7, 8 weeks out, one of the best long runs of my life. It was a 22 miler. It was one of the best runs of my life. And it was the best run that I had had moving forward and looking forward through race day, because I think I ran my race that day, and we had to do some damage control after that race because I wasn't recovering. I wasn't feeling great. And I remember my coach pulled everything back. So like as everyone else was kind of peaking for Boston, I was not, because we were trying to limit the damage of maybe what I had done in that long run, and just running top paces, like, giving a range of paces in that long run. I was running everything right on the top range, if not just a little bit faster and at altitude. So I remember showing up to race day being exhausted. There was a big group of us there for race day that year. It was so much fun. And there was a guy in that group, Brian, who wasn't really there, I think, to like PR. He was just there because he had qualified. There was a big group of us going, and he ended up getting food poisoning the day before, which is awful. And he had group texted us, and I woke up to it that morning on Marathon Monday, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not racing today. I'm going to cheer you all on." And it was also raining that morning, and I thought, "Oh, I want to do that." That is not the mindset you want to have on race day, is when someone's canceling their race to spectate and you're like, I really want to also do that. Like, no, you want to be excited. You want to have like excitement and a little bit of race nerves and giddiness, and I've had that for races, and on this race day I did not have it. And then to sit in Athletes Village, and you're just sitting in the rain, and you're just kind of like waiting for your corral to be called just to like get this thing over with. It's just not a good mindset to have. So strategically undertraining, on the other hand, is going to give you the opposite of that. You are going to have that giddy feeling. You are going to be excited and ready to go. And maybe you're going to be nervous, but the nerves are probably going to be more so around your ability to be able to do it, because you haven't had maybe quite the same training cycle that you're used to. You want to be hungry to run. You want to be on the line, hungry to run. And that's going to be the biggest kind of differ. That's going to be the biggest difference between the two, overtraining and undertraining. So even being tapered for a race, your taper might look quite a bit different when you are undertrained, or if you have a different cycle. My guess is if I decide to run Chicago, my taper looks different than the typical 2 or 3 week taper that I've had in the past. So you might, be in a mini taper, which is leading you to feel surprisingly strong and enjoyable during the race. Another aspect to kind of lean into about undertraining is the power of your aerobic fitness. So, aerobic fitness is built over years and years and years. So, if you are someone who is getting into a season where maybe they've been training for quite a few years, like myself, and you're getting into a season where you're not able to train like you want to train, you have the power of your aerobic fitness on your side. You have the power of all the years of training that you have under your belt to carry you through this training cycle. And I've coached runners before who've worked with me for 2, 3 years, and then they decide, they want to take a break, or they still kind of want to race a marathon, but maybe not race, but like they still want to go through it, but they just don't want to train. And we kind of talk through that piece of it. And I always give them the encouragement and the motivation to say, hey, you could really pull back your mileage for the next 12 weeks and you will be okay. If you're racing a marathon, please just make sure you get in one or two longer long runs, like 18 to 20. You'll be okay. And that runner is always okay. So I think making sure that, you're looking back on where you've been and how much fitness you've built over the years and understanding that whatever race you're running this fall is not just built off of one training cycle, it is built off of all the training cycles that you've consistently strung together. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I talk about consistency is because you get to build a lot of fitness, you get to build a lot of speed, you get to build a lot of PRs, you get to build a lot of friendships through the running community from it. And when something like this happens, where maybe you're in a season where you can't train the way that you want to because of life, you're able to lean into all of that consistency and pull it through. You kind of want to think about it like a bank. And I talk about this analogy quite a bit in a training cycle where maybe we talk about the deposits, like building and making a training deposit based off of a workout and cashing in on race day. You could look at all of your training cycles the same way of you're making deposits over and over and over again. And when you need to pull from that bank account, maybe it's in a season where you're going to be undertrained for a race, you can pull from that. And that's a really neat place to be because I think it gives the runner more options. I think that's a really cool place to be. So you're better prepared. It's almost like you could think of it too, like you're not cramming for a test, but you've been studying for so long that you're ready to show up. And maybe you haven't put in all the hours, all the study hours that you want to have in a test, but you are showing up and getting it done. Thinking about your training in the long-term view is really going to help, I think, mask or not mask, but really like help you flow through any nerves that you have about showing up to training, showing up to race day. Now, when you're undertrained going into a race, it forces you to be smart and strategic. So, let's say on race day, you're probably not going to go out too fast, right? You're probably not going to crash and burn. You're probably going to have more of a progression or conservative kind of pace at the start to kind of feel your body, listen to where you're at. It's also going to probably lead to a more enjoyable and successful race because you're probably not going to necessarily hit that fatigue wall as early as maybe you would if you went out hard and then you slow down, or you go out hard and you're trying to hold. So it's going to be a totally different experience. And I think too, your expectations are going to be different and you can adjust those expectations. You're probably not going to be tied to an aggressive time goal or an outcome goal. You're probably going to show up a little bit more relaxed and say to yourself, I'm just going to see where I'm at today and what's going to happen. And it could help you focus on having a better experience during the race. It could help you with a strong finish, having fun, high-fiving people. I think back to Chicago 2022. It was my fifth marathon. It was my very first, no, it was my second marathon with Nell, but it was my first marathon with her. As we're back into this working together for 3 years. So it was in 2022 and I had come off of a few years of like not great training for me. And, I had PR'd the marathon, but I was falling apart in the last 10K like significantly. I was losing a bunch of time in the last 10K. And when we started working together, that cycle, I only had 11 weeks with her, maybe even 10 because I got COVID during that cycle and we started with a 12-week cycle. And we went into that race knowing my PR was 3:20 earlier that year at the Mesa Marathon in February. And she said to me, for race day, we did not have a time at all. She said, your sole focus today is not blowing up in the last 10K. So we are going to take the first 10K like a jog, which once you're tapered in the marathon, the jog isn't a jog pace. The jog for me came in at like 7:30, 7:35 pace, which is what marathon time is that? I'm spacing on that. So let me look that up. 7:35 in the marathon. I should know this. This is a 3:18, 3:19, 3:20 basically. And that's what we started at. She's like, and it doesn't even really matter what time is coming in on the watch, because at Chicago anyways, the first 10K you don't have GPS access, so you're not going to know what pace you're running anyways. She's like, I just need it to feel comfortable. And that's what I did. And then every 5K from there on out, I just got faster and faster. And I had a few tough miles at mile 21 and 22. But I remember that last mile I ran, it was like 5K effort. I felt so good. I ran like a 6:10 mile. I was blowing past everyone. My mom has this incredible photo of me like coming up that like little bump at Chicago, that little hill before you take the last turn. And I'm just like, you can just tell I'm like racing. I am just like all out. And I had one of the best race experiences of my life. I not only PR'd the marathon by close to 6 minutes, but I had so much fun that day. I was high-fiving my friends on the course. I was, being goofy for the videos, and I had a really strong finish. I took it all in. Chicago, and the Chicago course is such a nostalgic feeling for me because it's a city that I spent a lot of summers in growing up. So every section of the course kind of brought back these really amazing memories for me. And it was such a great day. And I had a great outcome, and I wasn't even focused on the outcome. And I think that's what undertraining can do, because it forces you to focus on maybe the things that you can control, which is nothing about pace. And you really find this incredible experience along the way. Now, it also, I think, promotes a healthy relationship with running. I thought back to today and I thought, gosh, if I am training for Chicago and I have 8.5 weeks or, 9 weeks or however you want to look at it, maybe 8 weeks, this is kind of a nice cycle. Like, I don't know if I would ever want to go back to 12 weeks or 13 weeks. And I think I would never go back to 16 weeks, but gosh, 12 or 13 now even seems just kind of long. And long in a sense of like, it really does kind of take over your life in a way that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it taking over my life for that long again. So I think undertraining can really kind of promote that healthy relationship with running. So we can tie it back to that big picture of longevity and wanting to do this for as long as we want to do this, and doing it because we love it, not because we have to do it or because we're under some time constraint of, being a master's runner and feeling like your time's running out and you only have a certain amount of time. Specifically for the marathon, there's only so many marathons you can run in a year. So if you do the quick math, like, there aren't that many chances left for someone, in my instance of being 43, a few weeks after the Chicago race, I might have 2 years left. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of the timeline I have in my head, which gives me 2 years. It gives me 2 to 4 marathons at most after Chicago. So I think when you can learn that the healthy relationship with running, that longevity, there is no perfect training plan that's going to give you that successful race, really leaning into how you're feeling, how your body's feeling, what you want to create, what you want to do, can really help kind of reduce that anxiety and the stress that's kind of put on these races. And I think it's 100% okay to say, I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind with this goal. And I think for me specifically, I've been really battling that internally, and I've never really shared the fact that my goal, I never really shared like these thoughts about 308 being like so satisfying that I felt like if that's it, and I'm good with that. I've never really shared that to any other person, and I think it's interesting I'm sharing it on the podcast. But I think it's also really interesting to know that like pro athletes talk about this too a lot, where when it comes to like retirement, they say they just kind of know. They just kind of know like when it's time. And that's kind of what it feels like this for me in some ways. We'll see if maybe it comes back, if maybe it's just this season of life that I'm in where I'm trying to figure out like where I need to be prioritizing my time and what makes the most sense for my long-term life of what's important to me and the priorities that I have in life. But I think, making sure that the healthy relationship with running is there first and foremost. So, making sure you listen to your body, which is something I was doing, but I wasn't really communicating it well, or I was kind of avoiding maybe the feeling or the shame or the guilt around feeling this way because I am the running coach that talks about running and loving running so much, and what does it mean if I'm not training and if I'm not prioritizing running and PRing and if I'm not prioritizing that whole side of me. I think it's also important to prioritize your mental health around all of it and making sure that there is that healthy relationship with running. I know very specifically, I made a comment about, this was probably in June, about how because I wasn't running quite as much because I was sick and there were some other things going on throughout the year where I was like, oh, I'm not hitting, maybe my weekly mileage that I would normally hit. I specifically said that my Strava race battle wasn't going to have like the same yearly mileage on it. And that is like so not healthy to be thinking about your yearly mileage halfway through the year and thinking like, this year I'm not going to like PR my yearly mileage because I'm this far behind and I can't make it up. And like, it's just not a healthy place to be. Do I love those Strava water bottles? Yes, they are so cool. And yet, I think they're just going to stay in my cabinet. I don't think I need to pull them out and use them because it does create conversation. I have run higher yearly mileage over the last 2-3 years than I have ever before. And it's something that not a lot of people do. So there's a lot of hype around it. And I think it's like getting caught up in all of that is really interesting. And you can still train. You can still train with a coach and be undertrained, or listen to your body, communicate, prioritize your mental health, and view running as more of a balanced lifestyle and not something that that dominates and takes over. It creates a much more sustainable way and joyful way of running than ever before. And, I would really encourage you to take a really hard look on your running and what is happening right now, and know that there are going to be those workouts, those days, those weeks that are just like, oh, such a grind. That is also normal. And I think it's also really important to see and assess, when is the last time you had a joyful run? I used to sing all the time on my runs out loud by myself. I used to run with people all the time. I literally had a a wait list of people waiting to run with me. That is not a joke. I'm not even like, if you're listening to this, if you're local, you're probably shaking your head like, yeah, that's true, because people would reach out for runs all the time in between. Okay, like these are my workouts and long runs, so you can choose, like if that works for you, you can join me on that. If not, I had certain amount of days open to run with people, and then I left one day for me to run by myself because that is also important for me. And my running is totally different now. I don't run with anyone. I'm not singing and being joyful and having a lot of fun with my running. So I think it's really important to like look back on the early days, where you've been over the last year, how you're showing up today, and what makes sense for you. And really having that healthy relationship with running, because that's where it stems from. Whether you're undertrained going into a race or not, the foundation is having that healthy relationship with running, hands down. Because if you don't have that, you don't have anything. So I hope this episode helped you in the fact of you might be in a season or in a cycle where you are undertrained and you're still planning to go after that race and maybe a PR, or maybe going in and seeing what your body can do this fall. That's great. Hey, that's great. I'm so excited for you. So I hope this episode kind of helps normalize that is okay. The one caveat that I didn't talk about today is how it's not necessarily the right approach if you are a newer runner, if it's a distance that you haven't conquered before, if you've been really inconsistent in running for a long time, then you put yourself at risk for injury, or mental burnout for sure, but more so injury than anything else. So this episode is more so for that athlete who has been training consistently, who has been showing up and putting the work in. And now this season, oof, they're going into a race just not the same way as before. And sometimes that can be better. If you are looking for coaching, if you're looking for coaches who lift you high, who celebrate you, celebrate your wins, make sure you're not overtraining. Maybe you're looking to run your first marathon or catch that unicorn. We have Boston announcements coming here soon, I would say in the next few weeks. Or you're looking to create that breakthrough day on race day. The Elevate coaching team has one-on-one spots open for fall and winter race season. If you love running and want to get better and faster at this sport, feel empowered with how to train and how to race, we'd love to have you join our team. You can find more information about our coaching packages at elevateyourrunning.com/virtual-coaching, or feel free to send me an email at Sarah, SARA, at elevateyourrunning.com. Thanks everyone for listening to this week's episode and getting a bit of an insight onto my own personal kind of journey with running. And I hope to see you again next week.